Hello, hello. Welcome, Kingdom Business Fellowship. For those just coming on Zoom right now and those that will be watching it later, welcome to Kingdom Business Fellowship. Exciting times. So we're waiting for people to come on right now. And, of course, we have the Kingdom Business Fellowship right here in Tampa, Florida, which happens the first and third Tuesday of each month. And people are coming in. But, of course, it's always a privilege to come into your place, wherever you're at. And we have Kingdom Business Fellowships around the world. Well, welcome. Kingdom Business Fellowship is advancing the kingdom of God through business. Well, how many days do we have left till camp meeting? It's like 4.5, or Tony counts the hours in minutes, But I think it's 5 days or 4 days. Well, today's Tuesday. Let's look at it. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, boom. Sunday till Kingdom Business Winter Camp Meeting. 5 days. 5 days, and exciting stuff is happening, and we got a great treat tonight. But welcome once again coming in. Welcome everybody here, Kingdom Business. And, of course, we have people coming in from all over the world for our winter camp meeting. And so here's what we need to do. We need to talk about signing in. If you've never been here before, make sure you go to the QR code, put your camera on the QR code and sign in. We're trying to build a great database of entrepreneurs and business people, so as nuggets come out and different things come out, we'll be able to educate you guys and help everybody with that. I'll tell you the first thing I'm going to do just before I go to the winter camp meeting clip, I'm going to get Tony Utegard to come up. Tony and the team have been working so hard to get the sanctuary ready, and Pastor Rodney, almost every time he comes up, Tony, he says, people think we're not going to get it ready. Matter of fact, I did a clip with Pastor Rodney today. We'll play in just a minute for you guys. But tell us what's happening, and we're 5 days out right now, and what's going on for Kingdom Business.
Thank you, Pastor. 4 days, 8 hours, and I think we just crunched it. No, we have people working around the clock. We're cranking right now. As fast as you turn around, something's done. Just today I went upstairs and all of a sudden it's painted. And then I turn around and my own kid is there helping put cabinets in. I didn't even know he was working here today. And then I come down and half of the new landscaping is in that was just decided upon last night, and the rocks for it picked 4 hours ago. So as fast as we can, everything is going in, everything is moving.
Yeah, I was with you in the lobby. You had 3 different types of rocks. Pastor Rodney came down. And you said which one, he picked it, and now it's done.
Now it's in.
Wow,
yes.
Wow, all right, I like that.
so yeah, it's how we should always do everything, right now, and the best you can. We will be ready.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to switch it up a little. I'm going to play, I did a little clip with Pastor Rodney, because we're inviting everybody to Kingdom Business Fellowship. So this is from the stage 6 hours ago, and I think it's probably already transformed since then. Let me think if it's 6 hours ago. 7 hours ago. So this video you're going to see, which is less than 1 minute, was 7 hours ago with all the sights and sounds of construction. So let's play this real quick. Make sure you put it out here also. Thanks.
Hey everybody, Pastor Rick and I are standing right here on the platform of the new sanctuary. It is now Tuesday, about 11 a.m. And it's right before we start the conference. If you'll pan this way, and you'll see the balconies that have been put in place, the carpets that are going in today. And we want to invite everyone that's a part of Kingdom Business to come and be a part. Pastor Eric, tell us what's happening.
We're raising up 300 multi-millionaires, and you need to be here. We're sending this directly out to everybody that's a part or has signed up under Kingdom Business Fellowship. You need to get this in your spirit. You need to be around like-minded people. Iron sharpens iron. So Sunday to Sunday, the 22nd to 29th, change your plans, rearrange everything, and get here.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. And I know you're watching this thinking it's Tuesday, 11 o'clock. How is it going to be ready by Sunday? Come and have a look. Come see it. And we dedicate the place Sunday morning. You want to be here for the dedication of the new sanctuary. I love you. I'll see you Sunday.
All right, there you go. That was 7 hours ago that Pastor Rodney was meeting with Tony. They were going over the different rocks. So I said, hey, can you do a video real quick? And we walked right into the sanctuary and did the video 7 hours ago. So we have 5 days till winter camp meeting, Kingdom Business. And then also, just so you can get this in your spirit, We need to launch out into the deep. Let's show the winter camp meeting clip, and then we'll come right back. Watch this.
They that go down to the sea in ships, that do business in great waters, these see the works of the Lord and his wonders in the deep. God has called us to launch out into the deep so that we can see his wonders. And God is preparing you and getting you ready. But everyone will be used in this final hour. We have to see another great awakening. If it costs me everything. I saw the hand of God clear the earth one more time. Don't tell me God's finished. One more time he will shake. The kingdoms of this earth will become the kingdom of our God and of his Christ. And he will reign forever and forever. You are part of the glorious church.
Kingdom business, come on, kingdom business, that's awesome. And we have a lot of booths set up with different businesses, and we're building a great database of businesses around the world and different kingdom businesses that are running around the world right now. We're going to start to get those represented. And we're going to be taking some questions at the end today, because I know there probably will be a lot of questions in reference to what we're about to speak on. But Dr. KrisAnne Hall reached out to me, and she said, if you ever want me in KBF to talk about, different legal issues and how not to get sued and all of those things, I'd love to. And I really prayed about it, and I really felt, man, we really need to hear from her. She runs the Revival Ministries International RMI legal department here, and the whole, of course, School of Government, so much stuff we're doing, but she helps a lot of people around the world. Matter of fact, I just had this is a separate issue, but I'm telling her right now while I'm talking to everybody here, but I had a friend of mine that's a surgeon. He's a doctor in New York, and he actually got fired because he didn't get vaccinated a year ago. And now New York just came out with something that they just settled, saying that what they did was wrong. They shouldn't have terminated people and stuff. And so he called me up, and he was like, listen, I lost everything in this thing. What should I do? And I said, well, listen, we have a legal department. I'm just going to let somebody that handles stuff like this all the time give you some advice. And obviously, we always say, let peace be the umpire of your heart. You got to do what you feel God is telling you to do. But how many people know there's a lot of bad people out there that take advantage of people? And our job is to have wisdom and to operate in supernatural wisdom. Plus, I always say, and I know Dr. Rodney says it's especially in the end times, one of the greatest gifts of the Spirit we need is discerning of spirits. Because there's some people that can smile, look like they're your best friend, and they just want to take you out. So we're so privileged to have Dr. KrisAnne Hall here tonight. She's going to be talking about how to avoid litigation and being sued. And no one wants to be sued, but there's bad people out there, and there's people. And there's also things that people do that they should prepare for to make changes in, so that they don't allow themselves to be open. So please help me welcome Dr. KrisAnne Hall as she comes up to bless us tonight. We love you. This lady is awesome.
Thank you, Pastor Eric. It is absolutely my pleasure to be here with you this evening, and with all of you who are watching us online and probably later as well. You can go ahead and start my slides up there. That'd be great. Look, I'm glad you said what you said, Pastor Eric, about wisdom, because I am an attorney, and I know attorneys get a really bad rap, but we are here to protect kingdom assets. That's what I do. That is what I believe this legal ministry has been set up to do, to protect kingdom assets. And as members of Kingdom Business Fellowship, you have already taken the step to say, my business is created for the honor, the glory of God, to provide for the end time harvest. So you're already in that. A lot of times, though, because I've been working with the Christian community as an attorney since 2007, and a lot of times what we find is, I know it's hard to believe, but a lot of religion, okay? Christian business owners, churches, oh, we're just going to trust God. We don't need to have all that stuff. We don't need liability waivers. We don't need insurance. The Lord will take care of us. Look, preparation and prevention are wisdom. To eliminate preparation, to eliminate the understanding of prevention of liability, is to say that Joseph was wrong when he established that they should store up for the famine. That was prevention. That was preparation. There are the digging of the wells all through Abraham's and Abraham's children's lives were all about preparation and prevention. So we have to use wisdom and we have to be smart. And I can tell you that there are a lot of things that will come after you. How many of you have been running businesses for a long time? How many of you, the minute you stepped out and dedicated your business to the kingdom, a whole new wave of enemies came after you, right? Because you have now taken it to the next level. You have now entered a new realm, and there are new enemies that await you. And what we want to do is to help you protect your kingdom assets for the kingdom from the enemy's attacks. And that's what liability preparation is all about. It's about asset protection. It's about not making yourself an easy target. There are people, believe it or not, who actually make a living suing churches and businesses. They make a living by going on to business properties and, falling down. Having things fall on top of them. There are law firms who make a living off of clients who make a living doing this. But you don't have to be a victim. So that's really what we're going to talk about. Now, we could spend hours on this, so we're really just going to hit the mountaintops. We are river legal. This is Alexis. What is your last name now? Oh, you're still Morales. That's right. So this is Lexi Morales. She's about to get married. I'm not always a confused boss. So she is my paralegal. Abby Morin is somewhere. She may have stepped out. She is my river legal intern. They have brochures like this if you want to take some information with you about the legal services that we can help you with. So, go to the next slide, because our main sources of liability, and this might be like the Captain Obvious moment, right? Your main sources of liability are your customers, your employees, and third-party persons. That's pretty much everybody on the planet, right? You know, it's interesting, even working in the legal field, even working in the Christian realm, people who profess to be Christians aren't always so. Just because you're in church doesn't mean you have God on your mind. And in your business as well. So we always say an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So we want to make sure that these three aspects are covered. Now, within these three aspects, there are different subtopics. So go to the next slide. We're going to deal with customers first. Where are your liability windows with customers? And that comes in two general places: your contracts, your sales contracts. Your sales contracts can be a source of liability to you if your sales contracts are not legally sound. I could spend a good couple hours going over some of the contracts that people have brought to me. And the sad thing is everybody, most people don't like lawyers, right? They're kind of like dentists. You don't want to see one until you actually have a problem that needs to be fixed. But in reality, good lawyers would love to see you before there's problems. Because good lawyers, although we don't make a lot of money this way, good lawyers can help you not have problems. And one of the biggest avenues for problems that you can have are poorly written contracts. A poorly written contract is like having no contract at all. I have, at River School of Government, we actually teach half a quarter on contract law. So our River School of Government students learn the elements of contract law. And you get to see how contract law is very cookie cutter. There must be certain sections in certain places in order to make sure that your contracts are enforceable. Just because you've got something in writing doesn't mean it's actually enforceable. Now, the one thing that we really need to work on here is to make sure that we remember the first law of legal policy. If it's not in writing, it didn't happen. Any promise you make, any deal you make, any bargain you strike must be done in writing. Now, that's not to say verbal contracts are not binding. That's why I say don't allow employees to make any promises that are not in policy and not are in writing and just simply verbal. Because if you have an employee or you're making a verbal agreement with your client, they can take you to court and sue you based on that verbal agreement. And then what happens, everything's up in the air and it's your word against theirs. And if they're a professional grifter, they're going to be much better at making the judge believe their word. So it's better to always have a policy to never make agreements unless they're in writing. Because here's what happens. You get to the courtroom because your client sues you. Well, I know that's what the contract said, but we had this agreement and we talked about it on the phone and we met and had lunch over it and this is what we said. Do you know how powerful it is to sit before the judge and say, Judge, that's not possible. We have a strict policy in our office. Here it is in the policy manuals. We don't make any agreements unless they're in writing. I have never made a verbal agreement, and all our agreements are in writing. And as a matter of fact, you will have in your good contract a section that says all verbal agreements are null and void unless they are an addendum in writing to this contract. So, sometimes you have really happy, friendly employees who love to chit-chat, especially in sales, and they just sit down and run their mouth, and you got a mess. So, you need to make sure that it's in writing, in your contracts, that there are no such things as verbal agreements. No such things as verbal agreements. And make sure that you have, and we're going to talk about this a little bit more when we get to employees, make sure that you have employee manuals, employee guidelines that make it a violation of policy, even up to termination of the employee, if they make agreements outside the contract, because that could really be a problem for you. So contracts are a really big sea of questions and a really big issue, because contract law is really all about challenges. The whole art of contract law is about, how do I write a document that can't be challenged, and how do I challenge every document that's written? So when you have a good contract, what you really need to realize is that a good contract is not written to prevent lawsuits. I should say that's law number 2. There is no such thing as lawsuit prevention. There is nothing I can give you, there is nothing that any attorney on this planet can give you that will prevent someone from suing you. But the job of your good legal counsel is to ensure that you are protected from successful lawsuits. That's the key, because you can be sued for anything. But when you have good legal counsel, when you have manuals and written policies and good contracts, when someone sues you, they will not be successful, and you have protected your assets for the kingdom. Now, the second aspect of customer liability has to do with injury and negligence. Now, you can help to prevent successful lawsuits by having several things in place. Make sure that if you have a business where people are visiting, and I could imagine what people do. Maybe you have a zip line business. Maybe you have a nail business. Maybe you have something where there's an inherent risk, or you're actually putting hands on people. You want to make sure that you have a good liability waiver. We always make sure that our churches have good liability waivers. Now, it's difficult if you have a storefront to have a liability waiver for everybody that comes in and out. That would be really burdensome, inconvenient, and it wouldn't look very hospitable. So what you need to do in that case is just simply post signs. You see them here on campus a lot, or on the church grounds. As a matter of fact, when you come in the main entrance, there's at least 2 signs in 2 different languages. Entry is an admission of liability, waiver of liability. You can put that on your storefront. Enter at your own risk. The other thing you need to do is make sure that you are attentive of potential dangers. You'll notice here at the church, if there's a wire stretched across the ground, it is covered with something. Sometimes with gaff tape, but most of the time with those big yellow plastic things. That's there because we love you and we don't want you to fall down. But it's also there to prevent people from using that as a tool to steal our kingdom assets. Because trained and professional fallers see cords and they see dollar signs. So you want to make sure that your walkways are clear, and if you have any kind of danger, that there are danger warnings. Now listen, there are entire industries built around danger protection. Businesses who sell you things that will protect you from falling over cords and tripping over carpets and those kind of things. There's a whole industry to protect you because there's a whole industry to rob from you. Maintenance logs. That is very important. Security logs. I didn't put that up there, but that's very important as well. Remember, the rule is if it's not in writing, it didn't happen. But guess what? If it is in writing, that's your shield. If you have a maintenance log and you keep a maintenance log as a regular course of business and you're sued and they try to tell you you're negligent, you say, no, here's our maintenance log. We do regularly scheduled maintenance on all our equipment and all our grounds. Here's our safety log. Here's where we placed the protection of the cord in place. It's all documented. And when you have these maintenance logs, when you have these safety logs, you make sure that you also have a written policy in the employee manual that mandates that the logs are filled out regularly. Video surveillance is very important. Very important. Very important to protect your assets from being stolen, but to protect your assets from people who would lie about what's happening in your business. One thing that is really, really great to remember is redundancy is important to protect your assets. Okay, so I have a written liability waiver that somebody signs. Well, oh my goodness, this person is suing me and we can't find the written liability waiver. Well, we had it stored on the computer. Well, my goodness, that computer crashed 2 days ago. We lost that hard drive. Well, if you have video surveillance, you have surveillance like here on the on church grounds. We actually have video cameras that show videos of people signing in at the registration. So if we don't have the waiver itself, we can actually pull the video footage and say, there's that person, they're at the desk signing the waiver. So the more levels, like an onion, the more layers of redundancy to protect your assets, the better off you are. Because anything can happen to anything. Your video surveillance could be fried. Well, thank God we've got this liability waiver in writing. So make sure you have redundancies. Document all conversations and incidents. Keep regular and written incident reports. See, there's how many of you ever watched a lawyer movie or a lawyer show? So you probably heard objection, Your Honor, hearsay, right? Well, if I have a document and I want to put that document into evidence, guess what? It's automatically classified as hearsay and inadmissible. However, if I, as your attorney, can prove that you create that document on a regular basis with a regular practice as a regular course of business, it is now an exception to the hearsay rule, and I can get it into evidence, and the document speaks for itself. So that's why it's important to keep regular and written incident reports. Make sure that you take names of witnesses and names of employees and dates and times and what actually happened. Put on your incident form a remark that there was video surveillance, so we know that there's something else that you can go to. Employees as a source of liability. Employees also have contract problems. Most of the time, they come in the form of employment disputes. Your employees can fall down and get hurt, honestly and disingenuously. You can have discrimination and sexual harassment allegations. But you see, all of these things can be protected if you have the right documentation. Contracts and employment disputes are really dependent upon the contracts themselves. You can eliminate many employment disputes by having well-written employment contracts. Even if you have an at-will employee, an hourly employee that's not a contract salaried employee, you want to have somewhere written that you're an at-will employee. I can fire you without cause. And then, please, listen to me. Fire them without cause. The minute you fire someone and you go on an explanation of why they're being fired, you are now giving them ammunition to sue you for wrongful termination. You don't even have to say, I'm sorry, it's not working out. You just simply say, we're done here, go home. We don't need you to come to work tomorrow. The less you say, the easier my job is. The less you say, the documents will do all the speaking, and the documents will say, you're an at-will employee. You can be removed without cause. We also have to make sure that your contracts, just like your sales contracts, have all the elements necessary to make sure that they're enforceable and they protect against lawsuits. There are specific clauses that must be in every single contract to make sure that your contract is not overturned by a technicality. Make sure when you're dealing with your employees, look guys, even if they're your friends, even if they're your son. No, I'm serious. Do you know how many times I've seen relatives sue relatives over employment disputes? The best thing you can do in practice is realize that you don't do business with friends and relatives. Because that's the first way you lose friends and you have estranged relatives. Business is business. But even if it is friends, even if it is relatives, you must treat everyone the same. And if there is a disciplinary action that needs to take place, if there's an instruction that needs to take place, you do it in writing. One of the tricks of the trade is this. If you're going to sit down and counsel your employee, there's nothing that says you can't counsel them verbally. But before you do anything else, the minute that employee leaves your office, you sit down at your computer and you write an email. I just wanted to touch base with you and confirm what we just spoke of in my office. In my office, we discussed A, B, C, and D, and you agreed, and we decided that you would 1, 2, 3, 4. If you have any dispute with this, if you disagree with what's in this email, please let me know immediately. And if I don't hear from you, I'll know that you agree with everything in this email. Because then if they ignore you, the email becomes the truth that they've agreed to. So remember, what are you going to do? Make sure that everything is in writing. And if you do it with on a regular basis, as a matter of policy and procedure, I can get it into evidence as an exception to the hearsay rule. So, employees also fall down. As a matter of fact, you're more likely to have an employee injured on your business than a customer. Because who spends more time in your business? A customer or an employee? Now, you're not going to prevent a lawsuit. Remember, there is no guarantee against lawsuits. But what you can do is ensure that no lawsuit is successful. How do you do that with your employees? You make sure that your employees sign liability waivers when they come on the job. You make sure that you update those employee liability waivers on a yearly basis. You make sure that you have training manuals and regular training schedules that your employees sign off that they completed. Everything's in writing. Policy manuals, employee handbooks, danger warnings, maintenance logs, video surveillance. All the things plus the others that you would do to protect yourself from lawsuit from customers, you're going to do with your employees as well. But the most important thing you can do with your employees is make sure that you have good practiced policies in writing, and you have that your employees acknowledge that they have read, understood, and have been properly trained. Employee discrimination and sexual harassment. That is also something that you're going to want to make sure that you handle first in writing, in your employee handbooks, in your training manuals, and that you have regular training scheduled for this. Now, if you have a group training like this in your office, you need to take attendance. You need to make sure, not that you check somebody's name off, but the employee actually signs that they were present during this training. Take all complaints seriously. Do you know my nightmare? When I have an employer tell me that they had this female employee come in and complain about being sexually harassed by a male employee, and the employer says, we handled it. We told her that she should just stay away from him and she should just keep her mouth shut. Are you kidding me? You have now just traded your employee's liability for your own. Where that person could have just simply sued their coworker, you have now taken on that liability by condemning her for making a complaint. Follow policies. Now that goes for men these days too. Men get sexually harassed all the time as well. And it's not, hopefully in your kingdom business you don't have gender problems, but that's the real world, right? Document all conversations and all incidents and keep regular and written incident reports. Now, you want to keep these documents. You want to keep them stored in an organized place where you can find them. And you will want to store them for a minimum, depending on the kind of incident it is, a minimum of a year. So this is not something you throw away at the end of the month. This is something that you have to keep. Third-party liabilities. Third-party liabilities, 9 times out of 10, come from some form of employee negligence. If you have if you have a door-to-door sales business, if you have a business where your employees have to pick up supplies or make deliveries, if they are driving, even their own vehicle, if they are driving in the manner of your business, you are liable for anything that happens to them or by them with their car. It does not matter if it's their car or not. If they are on your official business, it is your official liability. So you want to make sure that you have all of that covered in policy, written policy, and in written liability waivers. You need to make sure that if your employees are using their own vehicles, which I realize that sometimes this isn't always possible, but you should always have a company vehicle that your employees are driving. But if your employees are driving their own vehicles, you're going to have to do a background check on their traffic record. You're going to have to make sure they have an active and legal driver's license. And you're going to have to make sure they have the proper insurance. If you have an employee driving their own vehicle for your doing work for you, and they just have that minimum, whatever it is, PIP, auto insurance, that's going to be problems for you, because guess what? That's coming out of your business insurance, whatever cannot be covered in their car insurance. Because there's one thing lawyers always do, especially injury lawyers. You know, the ones they call ambulance chasers? They look for the association with the deepest pockets. They'll first go after the insurance company, and they'll go after your business, because they're not going after your employee. He's probably living hand to mouth. They'll go after you because as a business owner, guess what? You have insurance. And that's the bread and butter of these injury attorneys. So you need to make sure there are proper insurance and proper policies in place. You should never, ever let your employees drive customers around in their own cars. Don't ever do that. Because guess what? Your customers and your employees are now both in danger. There is nothing to protect your employee from false allegations when they're the only two people in a car. As a matter of fact, you should have a policy in your office that your employees are never alone in a room with a customer. You should always operate with the buddy system. 2 employees, 1 customer, minimum. Because guess what? If it's just your employee and a customer, it's his word against theirs. And these professional lawsuits, boy, they can turn on the charm and the waterworks, and they are really, really Oscar-winning actors. So the buddy system and making sure you have the right kind of insurance will protect you from crimes against children and elderly as well. You should never let your employees be alone with children. Never. I don't care if you're at a daycare. If you're at a daycare, you especially need to make sure that you have at least 2 employees present with children at all times. This is the most vulnerable place that you have, child crimes. And guess what? It doesn't even have to be true. An accusation of abuse of a child will end your business because you don't even have to go to trial. You don't even have to be criminally charged. Your insurance company doesn't want to touch this. And the right case with the right accusation, your insurance company will pay off to settle so nothing ever happens, and they will cancel you at the next renewal. And the next thing you know, everyone in the insurance industry knows that you have a former case of child abuse in your insurance history, and they will not insure you. If you can't get insurance, you don't have a business. Or you don't have a bigger business. So what you need to do is you make sure you have the proper insurance policies. You make sure you have employee handbooks and policies that establish these protections, never alone, in the right vehicles, with the right insurance. And do your background checks. Background check every employee. Now, I think the criminal justice system is out of control, even as an attorney. I don't know if you know this, but in the state of Florida, if you drive with a suspended driver's license twice in the state of Florida, you are now a convicted felon. You can never vote again, and you can never own a firearm, and you will be a convicted felon for the rest of your life for driving with a suspended driver's license twice in the state of Florida. That is not justice. That is not equity. That is, well, that's a bad word we use these days, right? That is not proper law. So you get your background checks. You don't dismiss people just because they're convicted felons, but you do need to look at what the crimes are. And if you have a question about how the background checks work, guess what, guys? There are people that can help you read them because they're very, very confusing. That's what we do here. So that's what I have for you today. Like I said, just the mountaintops. We are at libertyfirst.legal. Our email is legal@revival.com. My name is KrisAnne Hall. We have these brochures for you if you have questions, and we can also make sure that we get your questions answered at a later date. If we don't get to them, we will have a booth at the conference, so you can come see us there. Thank you, Pastor Eric.
Awesome. Stay up here for a second. Give her a great God bless you. I need my help up here. I want to open it up to a few questions. Who learned a lot here? I mean, who realized there's a lot of things that each and every one of us need to do? And one question I want to ask, and then we're going to hand all, if we have another mic, or if not, we can hand mine around, is policies. You know, you went through a bunch, but what is, okay, let's say someone's starting a business and they've just got their business going. You need a liability policy. If you're going to be in business, you need a liability policy. Now, this might be an open-ended question, but what, for maybe someone just starting a business, what is a general liability policy when someone goes looking for one? What does that mean?
Well, when I'm talking about policies, what I'm talking about is business practices, like employee manuals, policies, standard operating procedures. How are things supposed to work? Because when you have the how are things supposed to work in writing, when your employee deviates from the written policy procedure and an accident happens, your liability is diminished. It is now on your employee for failing to follow that policy. And that's why you have to have training sessions too, because you have to tell them that you have to prove that you trained them on those procedures, and you have to have them sign for a receipt of that. Now, a liability policy is an insurance thing.
Right, that's what I mean. Yeah, so like here at the ministry, just so you know, like us pastors and stuff, we go through training all the time, video training, everything from, you know, how people groom people to all this stuff, things to look out for. I mean, we go through a lot of training here in the ministry to look out for these things, but because they're going to sue and people have insurance. So when someone has insurance policy, I know you're not an insurance agent, but what's a basic insurance policy that somebody would have in business? Like,
do you know that is not the same for everybody?
Sure.
It will
sure.
depend on what kind of business you have. If you have a high-risk business, if you're running a zip line business, your basic liability policy is going to be a lot different than a person who has a vegetable stand on the corner. And so that's why you need to have a good insurance agent. There are certain people that you need to invest in that will make your life a whole lot easier. Good insurance agents and good lawyers.
Okay, good. So
and even better pastors.
We're going to open it up for questions right now. Who has a question for Miss KrisAnne Hall? Okay. And we'll hand the mic to you. So that's Steve. Steve owns a paving company.
Yeah, just curious, are there pre-formatted manuals that we can use as a takeoff to have our own? Is there something already written so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel? We can kind of use that, maybe hand it to an attorney and have them review it.
Yeah, actually, when you get one of the brochures, you'll see that's actually one of the things that we can help you with. There are standard employee manuals that we can help you go over and say, you know what, we don't need that section for your business, but guess what, this manual doesn't have this, but we need to craft this for your specific business. So that's one of the things that we're designed to help businesses with. And as you mentioned, a good startup business. The best thing for me is if you come to me and say, I'm about to start a business, how do we start off right? I mean, we can go back and start over and get you on the right foundation at any time. But it's really exciting to us when we get to start a business on the right foot. But to answer your question, yes, there are things we never, okay, the legal world never reinvents the wheel. There's always something else we can pirate from someone else.
Questions for Miss KrisAnne?
How you doing? I have a rain gutter roof business, so kind of a lot of inherent
High risk.
Risk, yeah.
Yes.
So I guess the question is work comp.
Uh-huh.
Because there's always charlatans out there.
Yep.
And, you know, the insurance companies just want to settle. And so I'm just coming off 3 years. I had a guy step off a ladder on the bottom rung onto flat grass. Mm-hmm. And he said, I blew my knee out. Of course, it was a Monday morning, and he was doing pool work on the side. He'd only been working about 3 months. He told me he was a paratrooper, and he had previous knee injuries. I explained this to the attorney. By 12, that was 8:30 in the morning. By 12 o'clock, he had a thing that he went to the walk-in clinic, and they said, ACL, you need surgery. I mean, 3 hours. So it was a year and a half before they finally settled, and I think they settled for $30,000. How do you protect yourself from that?
Well,
From the insurance companies just saying get rid of it.
okay, well, that's one thing that you need to understand. Insurance companies are always going to get rid of it, okay? Because you see, $30,000 costs them less than they would have to pay an attorney to go to trial. So you can't take personally that your insurance company is going to settle. That's what they do. What you need to find sort of solace and victory in is when they settle at a really low price because you've done everything that you can to reduce your liability. When, I don't know if you happened to be at the service where Pastor asked me to come up and talk about the lawsuit that we just had where the insurance company settled for $7,000. Okay, that's a victory. That is really a victory, and I'll tell you how that went down. Because when we got the complaint, because they serve us with the complaint, the slip and fall attorneys, we immediately submit the complaint to your insurance company, and that's what you do, because you're going to be served. You immediately send it to your insurance company. Your insurance company will look it over, and they'll ask you, okay, what have you got? We immediately said, well, you know, we have a liability waiver that he signed. We actually have video surveillance of the incident. We have pictures of the cover because he claimed to have tripped over a wire. We have pictures of the cover, and our video surveillance shows that it was well lit, and there were people coming and going, and nobody else fell. The insurance attorney that I was talking to, he went silent. He said, I can't believe this. He said, I have never had a client, much less a church, be so well prepared. And they knew right then and there that they were not going to pay out on this. $7,000 for a guy who fell, who was removed from the facility on a stretcher, who's a professional at this. I mean, I pulled up his legal record. You can pull up anybody's court record. He had like 15 slip and falls and traffic accidents. It's how he makes a living. And this guy literally walked away with nothing. And the sad thing is he's worse off now because he gave in to all the surgeries, and because that's what the lawyers do. Oh, you got to go to the doctor, and you got to get this procedure, and we got to give you that surgery, and we got to do this, that, and the other, because that raises up the prices. Well, guess what? Now he has greater physical malady and nothing to show for it because he got called in his deception.
Wow. Another question?
Let me just answer one more thing.
Okay.
Really, and I know there is no magic incantation that I can give you, but remember, Pastor Eric said it already. We need to learn to have a really good spiritual discernment. And that has to happen when you're hiring people. Everybody can get taken by the good, the good slick talker and the real genuine person, but really press into the Holy Spirit before you hire people, because if you can get a word on someone before you hire them, it will save you a lot of trouble. And if he had a prior knee injury, that doesn't remove your liability. You actually adopt it. Okay.
I just want to say, as the head of the HR department for my company, a lot of what you said I can relate to. I tell my team, if it's not documented, it didn't happen, basically. But one thing I'm wondering about, because of my position, I'm involved in terminations all the time of employees. And if they decide to sue for whatever, wrongful termination for discrimination or whatever, the company has an insurance policy to protect it and its assets, et cetera. What about our personal protection? Because it's my understanding they can also sue me personally if there's an issue. Is that correct?
Not really. Not in the workplace. The only time they could sue, if you're the business owner, you're not the if you're the HR person, they can't really sue you personally. But if you own the business, they can try to sue you personally. But that's why you have a corporation to shield your assets your personal assets. That's why you incorporate. By the way, that's the entire reason you have a corporation, is to separate your personal assets from the corporation. When you create a corporation, you actually create a legal entity that in the eyes of the court, it sounds crazy, is a person. I always find it ironic. In the eyes of the court, a corporation is a person, but a fetus is not.
So just to confirm, if there were a wrongful termination suit, I would not have to worry about my personal assets, even if I were involved in the situation?
Well, it's okay, so I'm a lawyer, and I'll tell you, I can't answer general questions with specific answers. So there's always something back there that I don't know. So to answer a question like that, I would have to know more details. I would tell you in a general sense, as an employee, your personal assets are not going to be sued for wrongful termination. If you're the business owner and you don't have proper corporate structuring, yes.
Because
maybe.
aren't you following the procedures of the company that's been set forth for you?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
Absolutely.
you are a subject to the corporation. You are not the corporation. They can't sue you. Now, if you're abusing someone, if you're sexually abusing them or harassing them or physically abusing them, then you can be sued individually, but not for wrongful termination.
We can
Thank you.
take one more question, then I'm going to get Miss KrisAnne to pray over everybody. I really feel we need to do that. And then, she is accessible. Like you said, she's given everyone the brochure, the emails, everything. We're doing our best to try to help people. So I don't know if we've taken any questions from this side. So here.
I just want to ask, you've talked a lot about having things in writing, and I wanted to know how legally binding texting is, because now we don't really use emails as much, but if I send someone a text and say, hey, this is what we discussed, just like you said, but in the format of text messaging, is that as legally binding?
It can be. Can I tell you, it's a nightmare to reproduce. It really is a nightmare. I mean, I get people who say, well, I made this agreement in texting. Great. How am I going to print that? If I can't submit it to a court, it's really of no value to me. I understand how ubiquitous it is. Everybody is texting everything. But really, it's worth following up with an email. And seriously, it's so easy. Just copy and paste what you have in the text into an email and say, hey, we just had this text conversation. I just want to make sure, because texting can be kind of confusing, I want to make sure we're on the same page, and just put it in an email. I need something I can print out.
Wow. Just before Miss KrisAnne prays, Tony, I feel you got something to say here. So just give us your 2 cents, because you do a lot with KBF, and you've run a lot of companies,
So I was actually laughing a little bit with Brody, because almost every single example you gave, KrisAnne, I've had. I've had every kind of lawsuit. I've had every one of those employees hurt themselves, break their ankles. I mean, every single thing, other than the child molesting thing. We've had every single thing.
Praise God.
Thank you.
You don't ever want that, ever.
No. The one thing that you touched on, though, that was kind of like, if you had to pick just one of the many, many things that you could do, the thing that saved me every single time was having the right, proper insurance. The most expensive one was when I had an employee on their lunch break in their own car decide, hey, I'm going to run back to the warehouse and get something. Go on the way, somebody ran a red light, hit him, somebody died in the accident. He was in the hospital for 8 months, almost lost his leg, rehab. I mean, almost $1 million. But it was because of our insurance, because we had the right insurance barrier there. That was our first and foremost, and that's where I learned that, general liability insurance, like, oh, Tony, you only have $2 million. Well, the $2 million isn't to pay a claim. It's to pay KrisAnne and the lawyers to fight it. So besides, the right insurance, what would you say is the next, best first? If somebody could only pick one thing to do now, maybe they're very, starting out in business, they can't quite invest that heavily. What would you say would be the first best thing to do?
Well, the insurance, obviously, that's number one. Would be to have the proper written policies. Proper written policies. That really will protect you if your employees there's a concept in law called vicarious liability. When you own a business and you have employees, those employees are not actors for you. They're actually an extension of you. Their arms become your arms. Their legs become your legs. And anything they do, it's called vicarious liability. Anything they do, you are now liable for as if you did it yourself. If you have the proper policies in place that include written policies and trainings and making sure that these things are followed, and you put them into practice, having a written policy and then just letting employees go off willy-nilly and not following the policy, you are increasing your liability. So what you have to do, remember, vicarious liability, what cures vicarious liability? Proper policies. What creates problems? The other legal practice that we have is called negligent supervision. If you don't have proper policies and proper trainings, you are per se automatically liable under the doctrine of negligent supervision because you did not train your employees properly.
Wow. So if Tony in his manual would have had something that no employee can use their car, for anything related to business without approval, or you must use a company vehicle or something along those lines.
Or, in the policy manual that if you're on your lunch break, you're no longer, your lunch break is your private time. You are no longer on duty. Or even so, if you're on your lunch break, you can't leave property. If you leave property during your lunch break, we are not liable for what happens because the policy is your lunch break must be held
And you don't know that to have that in there until somebody does something stupid like
And one last question about that, because one of my businesses and some of the guys here, they have a lot of employees that do drive their own vehicles all the time, every day. So like when we're doing home remodeling, you'll have 10, 12 employees drive their own vehicle to work, get stuff, go to the customers' houses, or everywhere. So what about a business where the employees do have to use their own vehicles all the time?
Well, you, number one, must let your insurance company know. If you are letting your employees drive their personal vehicles all over the place and your insurance agent does not know, you are in big trouble. You have to be honest with your insurance agent because your insurance agent will make sure that you have the policies that you need. There are certain riders that you can get on your insurance policy that has to do with employees using private vehicles. It'll cost you more, but save your business in the long run. You have to have training. You have to make sure that your employees, like I said, have proper driver's licenses. If they have an unsafe driving record, you're not going to let them be the driver to do this, okay? You've got to look at all of this stuff and make sure, is their vehicle safe? Is their vehicle being held together with duct tape and super glue? Is their vehicle properly insured? Look, when people use their own vehicles for your business practices, you now own those vehicles, and you own all the problems that come with them. It really saves you money in the long run to get business vehicles and operate with business vehicles. Because guess what? You get the wrong employee that decides that they're having a bad day and they just need to, vape a little bit to take it down a notch. Guess what? What happens to them when they're high as a kite is now your liability because they did it on the job with your permission. Because remember, whatever they do on the job, they do with your permission, unless you have a policy against it. You've got to have all of this stuff in writing. And it's funny because what somebody said, I don't remember, I heard it. Why do you need good insurance company agents? Why do you need good lawyers? because of what Tony just said. Everything that I said has actually happened to him. Can I tell you, everything that I just said didn't happen to me? But as an attorney, I gather all the experience of all the clients that have come to me with the problems. And as an attorney, you benefit now from the lessons I've learned from the tragedies of my clients.
We'd encourage those in KBF not to let your employees vape to take it down a notch. We would just encourage that. That is not kingdom business. So, but we understand. Hold on a second. You're going to pray. Who's been blessed by Miss KrisAnne? Awesome. Great job. She's going to pray. It's night 949 in the stand. I'm going to be preaching, and it's over in Studio B, and you have to go around the front. You can't go through the pavilion because we're getting everything ready for camp meeting, and they got it blocked off right now. So you're actually going to have to go around the parking lot. You might have to move your car and drive over to the main parking lot and go to Studio B. Miss KrisAnne will hang out here just for a bit, to answer some questions, but we do need to make a move that way. But why don't you go ahead and pray for everyone in Kingdom Business along the lines of what you shared.
God, we come to you today as a people who have set ourselves apart. We have set ourselves apart for your purpose and for your kingdom. We have said, both in our spirit and in our actions in our business, that we will do what we do with excellence, with wisdom, for your glory, to benefit your kingdom, so that we may have a part, that we may be a part of the end time harvest. Everything that we do is to bring in what you need for the harvest. We have dedicated our lives. We are dedicating our businesses. And now we come to you, Lord. We come to you and we pray to you for supernatural wisdom. We all expect, we know that you will protect us. We will have supernatural protection. We know that we will have supernatural provision. But you said that if we want wisdom, all we need to do is ask for it. So we come to you today with humble hearts, with great intent, and great expectation for the fulfilling of your promises. You said that when we work and we obey and we trust for your kingdom, that you shall bring these things to pass. When we ask for wisdom and knowledge, you said it shall be given. That means there is no other option. It must happen. Please, God, we ask you today, give us supernatural wisdom. Touch us if there's something that we are about to do that we should not do. Give us wisdom and discernment. Let us know in our spirit that yes, we should go right and no to go left, and that we will walk your pathway for your glory, for your provision. We come together, God, knowing that you are the God of yes and amen, and that your promises to us cannot be denied. We come with expectation, not with doubt, but with expectation, knowing that these things will be fulfilled. We thank you today for meeting with us. We thank you today for filling us with your spirit so that we can go forward with boldness and supernatural power to bring in the harvest that you need and you expect. And on that day, yes, Jesus, on that day when we see you, we know that we will all hear, "Well done, thou good and faithful servant." And we do this all in your name for your glory. In Jesus' name, amen.